Thank you for tuning into Literary Blend, a publishing podcast. I'm your host, Demi Michelle Schwartz. There's no perfect recipe for chasing a dream in the publishing industry, but I hope the conversations on this show give you the ingredients you need to bake yours into reality. So let's flip the page and get into this chapter of Literary Blend. Hi friends, welcome back to Literary Blend. Today's chapter is called Emotional Shifts and the Creative Process. I'm so excited to chat about this. Joining me on the show today is Lexi Heathermoor. Hi, Lexi.
Hi, Nimi.
How are you doing today?
I'm great. Thanks for having me today.
You are so welcome. I'm very excited to chat with you all about emotions. But first, I would love for you to share a little about yourself and your journey in publishing so far.
Of course. So I am an adult dark romance writer. I'm currently working on my fourth novel, almost finished with this round of edits, thank goodness. Third, if we don't count the dumpster fire that was my first attempt at writing, my third novel, which I try not to. I kind of got into writing almost accidentally. I've always been a voracious reader, and when I started reading romance after getting a job at my local library, freshman year of high school, I couldn't get enough of it, but I never really saw myself trying to write it. I was always more interested in kind of what went on behind the scenes, the editing, the production, all the steps that it took to put the story in the reader's hands. So when I tried my hand at it during COVID lockdown, it was just a fun thing to do to pass the time. I did one too many puzzles and I felt like I was losing my mind. So I was looking for really anything to kind of branch out. And then my sister was actually the one who encouraged that I try to take the publishing route, and that tanked, as a lot of first attempts do. And it wasn't until my second book that I signed with my agent, Grace. It's been almost a year since then, which is wild to me. And she's been a godsend through all of this. And I've made a lot of unexpected friendships through the community she fosters with her clients, and it's just been really wonderful, but hard, as everybody who approaches publishing from a traditional attempt can attest to. But other than that, I have a partner I've been with for going on 10 years and a cat who will be 11 in October. And I spend the time that I'm not working on my book doing yoga and taking walks and trying all the good local restaurants, drinking all the wine.
Amazing. Well, I'm super excited for you and all you have experienced so far, getting agented and all the things. And now I would love to shift gears into our chat about emotions. So, in general, I would like to talk about how our emotions naturally affect the creative process. So, I wanted to have you start and share any thoughts you have on this.
Yeah, of course. I think as writers, we sink a lot of emotion into the stories that we write, and that's what makes them so good. It draws the reader in. It's what makes you actually feel things along with the characters. And I think those are hallmarks of really great stories. Um, and when you're having a hard time with whatever's going on in your personal life, it can be hard to sort out those emotions and like what's going on internally, and then use that to create something actually like worthwhile. And it's such a mental process in general. And I think that having heightened emotions of any kind can impact it in a good and a bad way.
I completely agree with you. Writing and any kind of art is a deeply human experience. And I think because of that, our emotions are naturally going to affect our writing in good ways, bad ways. Sometimes for me, like, especially with songwriting, I tend to write songs that directly reflect the emotion I'm feeling at a certain time because I write very autobiographically. With stories, it's not necessarily the same thing. However, I have noticed that my motivation level and the kinds of stories I'm writing and things like that are definitely affected by my emotions. And I think one of the hard things is, especially if you're pursuing traditional publishing, if you're submitted to, literary magazines and anthologies and things with deadlines, if you're in positions where you have edits due and revisions due to your agent, or you're trying to submit something, then you kind of have to find the inspiration and write at the times when things might be hard. And that's just part of treating writing as a job, but that doesn't mean that it's easy all the time. And we're definitely going to break down some key emotions that we can experience as authors and how they can affect us. But I think that it's natural to feel these ways, and if they affect your writing, that's normal. And so I just wanted to make that point upfront, that if you're feeling a certain way and your writing's not going the best because of that, that's normal and that's nothing to feel bad about.
Yeah. I mean, I definitely have put pressure on myself, and then there's, like, this guilt associated with it when a bunch of stuff's going wrong and you're trying to force yourself to work on something and it's just not happening. There's that rebound guilt too of, like, and frustration.
Yeah, the frustration is something I experience so much. Like, whether it's, like, related to a certain emotion or just, like, I'm working on something and it's not as naturally flowing as other things, I'm like, "Oh, come on, Jimmy, you've done this a million times before. What is wrong with you?"
Exactly.
So, first, I would love to dig specifically into grief, and I know you have a specific experience with this that you wanted to share, so go ahead.
Yeah, so, when you reached out to me about doing this and we talked about what topics could be best to cover, I was actually, on a vacation I had booked to get out of my house because, in April, we had to make the really hard choice to say goodbye to my, dog of 16 years. I got her when I was 19, which feels like a lifetime ago. Um, and I was finding that being home was just too hard. And that was on top of the 5-year anniversary of my mom's passing in March, which came after my 35th birthday in December. So the end of the year of last year and the beginning of this year really just kind of was compounding grief, which I think I underestimated at the time. I tried to force myself to work on things because avoidance is my best friend. Um, as many writers probably can also agree, we all like to escape into our imaginary worlds. And it wasn't that it wasn't working. Like, I've had blocks where things are not going how I want, or the story's not panning out, or I'm struggling with a certain section that I just can't make click the way I want it to. This was almost like a total depletion of any creativity. I genuinely thought I was broken and that writing was just going to be something I used to do, um, which is something that's brought me such joy, was devastating. So having that then on top of the grief that was making it really hard to just get through the day was an added piece I hadn't expected. Um, and it wasn't like I didn't want to work on my story because I did. I would sit at my computer for hours and just stare at my screen, and then I would work on the same chapters over and over and over, trying to figure out what it was that was wrong with it. But it wasn't what was wrong with the story; it was what was wrong with me. And eventually, I gave myself a break to just step away from it. The first one didn't take. I came back and the same thing happened again. And then we got about a month out from the actual like date. We had the vet come to the house, and I sat down at my computer like I had almost every day. And something shifted a little bit. I got 2 chapters done, which I ended up going back and completely changing, but it was that tiny little bit of progress that felt kind of like a light at the end of the tunnel. I remember texting one of my friends and just being like, "Oh my gosh, I actually worked on it today and something happened." And I was so relieved and excited to know that it wasn't gone. I There's just times I think when you're so emotionally spent that you have nothing else to give. And being a writer is giving so much of yourself to your story, to your readers, to, you know, the effort of trying to put something together that's great. And sometimes I think we just have to accept that we don't have it in us. Uh, but for anybody else who potentially experiences that, I thought that this would be a great thing to talk about so that they don't have that panic moment where they think, "Oh my gosh, I'm not going to be able to write anything ever again. It's just gone. This is going to be something I can't do anymore. I've broken my brain."
Thank you so much for being so vulnerable and opening up about that. I think that's super relatable. And the takeaway, like you said, is in the moment, you can feel like you're never going to write again. You're never going to get the spark back. But eventually you will. And allowing yourself to heal or just take the time away that you need to, that your mind needs to, that's necessary, and you might get frustrated because you just want to write. And I think one of the most frustrating things, no matter what kind of emotion you're dealing with, whether it's the grief like you're talking about, or just like imposter syndrome, or like being anxious or depressed or whatever, the worst situations, or some of the worst situations I feel like, are the moments where you genuinely want to write, but you just can't do it. And that's what's so frustrating.
Feels like torture.
Yeah, for sure. I had a similar experience from the songwriting perspective. Several years ago, one of my songwriting mentors passed away unexpectedly, and it wrecked me to the point where I like wasn't writing songs, and it was the kind of situation where I wanted to write songs. I was working on my next project, and like every single time try to write a song, it wasn't working. And eventually, I actually wrote a song kind of about him, and after that I was able to write again, and I'm never gonna release that song, but it was just for me. But I think that was something I had to do to kind of find closure and let it out. But I think one of the struggles, especially when you're dealing with something like grief and feeling the emptiness, I feel like a reason why it's so hard to get the motivation to write is because you feel numb and you feel empty. And because how we talked about how emotions are so tied to writing, the emotion and the characters and their experiences, that's what creates the reader connection. So if you're feeling so numb and empty that you can't put that into writing, then it's not going to happen naturally, and it's going to feel so flat and lifeless because you're not putting any emotion into it because you yourself are feeling numb.
Well, interestingly, in a like on the flip side of not feeling numb, I also find that having too much emotion means that you don't have any left to give to your characters and the story, and it ends up having the same result, actually.
Yeah, that's interesting too. Like this, the emotional overload and like not knowing what to do with it, and kind of over projecting as well. Like that could be a thing where everything in the story even feels so extremely heightened that it just isn't clicking naturally. So I definitely think that both ways, both extremes can result in things not working naturally.
For sure.
And next, I would love to shift into talking about things that we experience often as writers: anxiety, self doubt, feeling like we don't belong, feeling like we're not good enough. These emotions can directly come from publishing, and they can also come from just different aspects of our lives. But especially when they're from publishing, that can have a direct impact on our creativity and inspiration and the quality of our writing during those times. So I'm curious if you have anything to share about this from your own experiences.
Of course. So like I mentioned, after my first book, querying it was really hard. I was not at all prepared for the amount of rejection and imposter syndrome I would be plagued with in the process following attempting to get it published. I did very little research. And honestly, I wish I could apologize to the agents whose time I wasted with that horrifying piece of work. I've come a long way as a writer in 6 years. So, but yeah, I mean, I see it all the time. I'm active on X and on various social medias, and you constantly see querying and authors on sub talking about how hard it is getting the constant no and how difficult it is to keep pushing through in the face of so much rejection. But it's worth it. That's I think why we chase publishing in general, instead of deciding to take the route of self-publishing, which is its own beast in itself. But I think that the reason we subject ourselves to so much trauma almost, is because that yes means so much more when you finally get it. Um, but I have definitely lived through my fair share of rejections and criticisms. I had agents tell me that my stories weren't realistic. I've had editors tell me they're too commercial, not commercial enough. You're just constantly getting conflicting information. So having people who champion you and are there to support you and hold you up when you can't hold yourself up is such an important aspect of this as well.
Yeah, for sure. I feel like for me, one of the hardest things is starting a new book. Like with short stories, I'm fine because those are so small. But for me, the anxiety and the self doubt really hits when I'm supposed to be writing a new book. Like right now, I'm highly procrastinating my gothic thriller. The thing's been plotted for a hot minute, like fully outlined. And I'm like, why am I not writing it? And I think it's just this anxiety of the possibility that I could write this and it might not sell. And that's like the reality of the situation. Every time I write a book, there is a chance that it's not going to sell down the road. But you have to write it anyway. And if that book doesn't sell, the one you write after it might, and you're not going to get to that second one unless you write the one you're supposed to be writing. And so I feel like just, and not only that, but just the concept of standing on the precipice of another book project is like I've done it 5 times before? Yeah, this will be my 6th one. So I've done it several times, but it's still scary, and I think even though I did it before, I'm sure, like, I've grown over the years, and then my prose has gotten better, and I know much better how to tell a story, but because this is a totally different story, new characters, new plot, new everything, it's still new enough to where I'm like, "Oh, no." So that's where I really get it, for sure, like, when I'm starting to write a new book.
Yeah, it's definitely daunting and super intimidating, even just like kicking it off. It's why I think there's so many people who take the approach of like plotting intensely. And then there's other people who don't start writing the story at the beginning at all because they can come back to the beginning once they kind of have a feel for the characters a little more. I am definitely guilty of writing random scenes as I think about them after an idea comes to me. And then once I have like 3 or 4, I'll go back to the beginning and figure out where I want their story to start after that. So I think everybody has their little ticks and habits that they use to help them kind of kickstart themselves when they're feeling anxious and nervous about starting a story.
Yeah, for sure. For me, like, I'm good with deadlines. And like hard deadlines. And I do this a lot with my anthology submissions, especially because I beta swap with my friends all the time. If I'm like anxious or feeling self doubt over a new story, I will tell my friends, give me a super hard deadline like in a week or a few days, and trust me, it will be done. And every single time I do it, I think for some reason having the deadline lights a fire under my butt and I get it done.
No, same, for sure.
So, to move into a more positive part of the chat, we're not feeling depressed and anxious and stuff all the time. Sometimes we're feeling great and confident and optimistic, and this can definitely have a more positive impact on our writing. So, what do you have to share about this?
For sure. When I'm on a roll and the words are flowing out of me and I'm powering through edits and I can just feel how good the story is and how it's shaping up to be, like your fingers just can't move fast enough to get it on the page. That is one of the best feelings ever. And I don't know. I mean, sometimes even just like sitting down and having that happen unexpectedly can pull me out of something and send me into a better headspace where I start to feel more positive and I start to feel better. And then my work starts to reflect it. And then I can make real progress on the story. But there's also times where I'm very happy and like excited and I have a lot planned and that impacts the amount of time that I spend on my writing because I'm just doing other things in my life that make me happy. But I do find that I crave getting back to my computer to work on my story when I'm in a better headspace and more excited about what's going on than when I'm having to like force myself to slug through it.
Yeah, it definitely moves naturally. And like you said, it's like you can't type fast enough. And that's the beauty, I think, especially of the new shiny idea. And I know once I get past the anxiety of starting a new book, once I start and get a couple chapters in and get to know my character and their voice and everything, I know I'm gonna get to the point where I count down the minutes until I can work on the story again. And
Exactly.
yeah, so I think that those exciting moments when things are going great, those are the ones we look forward to. But of course, there are the hard ones along the way, and it's just part of the process. And I think personally for me, whenever I'm feeling happy and optimistic, those are the moments that I look forward to, and those are the moments that make everything else worth it. Because during the hard times, that makes you stronger. It's part of life, and it makes you appreciate the positive times more. And so I think that's just something I keep in mind as well.
Oh, for sure. I mean, just like our characters, if we only had hard times, nobody would wanna read that story. You have to have the balance.
So I can torture my character for 300 pages with nothing good.
As long as you give them
Uh.
a happy ending, it's fine.
That's something I'm constantly keeping in mind because I write thrillers, so it's like not great for them, but gotta give them the good moments too. Unfortunately, no, I want my characters to be happy, even though I torture them.
Same, same.
Well, this was such a fabulous chat. Just to wrap up before the plot twist, what final thoughts do you have to share on emotional shifts and the creative process?
Really just the only thing I would say is don't let hiccups in the process keep you from pushing through. You know, writing is it's a lifelong passion for most people. And just because it takes you 5 or 500 books before you get published, or if you decide to take the self-publishing route, it's worth it for the journey and the emotional expression that you get through the writing process.
Yes, for sure. I would just add that how emotions affect the creative process is very individualistic. And so, in these moments, no matter if you're feeling very positive emotions or challenging ones, try not to compare yourself to how other authors handle their writing during those situations because it's not going to be the same. I think it's really important to pay attention to yourself and your own emotions and how that affects your writing. And however that is, that's just how it is. And there's nothing wrong with taking an extensive break if you need that. If writing helps you get through difficult times, then write when you're having rough times. It's different for everybody. And so I just want you to remember that. This is the end of our chat, but it's time for the plot twist. Are you ready?
Okay. Yes.
Are you ready to talk about the days of the week?
The days of the week. I mean, sure.
What I'm going to do is give you 3 days of the week, and I want you to pair a genre with each of them. So the
Ooh, okay.
vibes of the days of the
Okay.
week. All right.
Alright.
Your days are Sunday, Thursday, and Saturday.
Okay, well, obviously, I'm gonna pick Saturday is romance.
Oh, that's good. Yeah, definitely.
Romance is definitely a Saturday vibe. Um, Sunday, I would probably pick something like an easy read, like a genre fiction comedy.
Oh,
I don't
that's
know if
good.
that's a thing, but I like
Yeah.
it. And then you said in Thursday feels like it has thriller vibes
Oh, yeah.
because it's, like, looming on Friday.
Yeah. Amazing. Loved your answers. Loved having you
Thank
on the
you.
show. You're welcome. Can you please share with everybody where they can connect with you online?
Sure, I'm on, X, TikTok, Instagram. I think that's it.
Amazing. What's your handle so people can connect with you?
Oh, that's a good question. I think I am at Lexi Heathermoor. It's
Awesome.
just my name.
Awesome. Amazing. Well, thank you so much for joining me. I loved having you on the show.
Yeah, this was great.
It was so lovely having you, listeners. As we're up on this chapter with Alexi, all about emotional shifts and the creative process. If you enjoyed our conversation, please consider leaving Literary Blend a review and giving it 5 stars to help others just like you discover it. Also, if you have friends in publishing you think would enjoy the show too, please pass it along to them. Thanks for listening, and until we flip to the next chapter, happy reading and writing.